Hollywood built a golden throne for Michael B. Jordan on Oscar night, but nobody wanted to look at the blood leaking from underneath it. On March 15, 2026, you saw the tears. You saw him holding his mama's hand at the Dolby Theater. You heard him scream "God is good" twice before listing every single black actor who ever held that statue. It was the perfect, clean, emotional Hollywood narrative. The media swallowed it whole. But while the Academy was busy patting themselves on the back for rewarding a vampire horror movie, the real-life vultures in the industry were having a quiet, panicked meltdown. What Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler actually snuck inside Sinners wasn't just a movie. It was a calculated, unapologetic attack on the very elites sitting in the front row clapping for them. Did the Oscars willingly reward a cinematic masterpiece? Or did they accidentally hand a trophy to a man who had to tap into a terrifying, real-world darkness just to survive the performance? The internet has been losing its absolute mind for months trying to decode the hidden messages buried in this film. But the most disturbing twist didn't happen on the screen. It happened behind closed doors. The Harvey family chose this exact moment to let the world know that the devilish darkness Jordan played on set might not have stayed in Mississippi. Grab your popcorn and turn off the lights. We are pulling back the curtain on the multi-million-dollar illusion Hollywood desperately tried to hide from you. The glitz and the glamour of the Dolby Theater can cover up a lot of sins, but it cannot cover up a multi-million-dollar psychological meltdown. To understand why the elite are shaking in their designer boots, you have to look at the exact moment the golden boy of Hollywood decided to play with fire. Michael B. Jordan didn't just walk onto the set of this movie to clear a paycheck. He entered a creative partnership with Ryan Coogler that was designed from day one to expose the structural rot of the entire entertainment industry. For 14 years, these two have been making hits, but this time they decided to build a narrative so sharp it cut right through the studio system. They took a budget of nearly $100 million and used it to construct a Trojan horse that has now completely broken the internet. The controversy started brewing the exact second the public realized this wasn't a standard Hollywood horror flick. This wasn't about cheap jump scares or monsters hiding under the bed. Coogler deliberately chose to set this entire nightmare in Clarksdale, Mississippi, in the year 1932. If you know anything about music history, that specific town is ground zero for the most chilling supernatural legend in America. It is the birthplace of the myth of Robert Johnson, the mediocre blues guitar player who allegedly walked down to the crossroads at midnight and handed his instrument to a dark, towering figure. The legend says the figure tuned the guitar, played a single track, and handed it back, transforming Johnson into an overnight musical genius. But what Hollywood did for decades was flatten that rich cultural story into a cheap tale about selling your soul to a Christian devil. This is exactly where the scandal begins to leak into the real world. The movie explicitly argues that the true monsters aren't the ones hiding in the shadows with fangs. The true monsters are the ones wearing tailored suits, sitting in corporate boardrooms, and signing young talent to predatory contracts. Coogler used the metaphor of the vampire to represent the systematic consumption of black culture by white-dominated commercial institutions. The vampires in the film travel the world finding communities full of life, getting close to them, and draining everything they have while leaving a hollowed-out shell behind. It is an incredibly loud, aggressive critique of how the blues, rock and roll, and hip-hop were systematically taken from their creators while the original artists died broke. But the industry could have handled a movie that critiqued history. Hollywood loves to pretend it cares about past mistakes while continuing to commit the exact same sins in the present. What the executives absolutely could not tolerate was the fact that Ryan Coogler took the exact theme of his movie and weaponized it against the studios during contract negotiations. When he was shopping the script around town in early 2024, he caused a massive bidding war between Universal, Sony, and Warner Brothers. But he didn't just ask for a massive budget. He demanded 3 non-negotiable clauses that sent absolute shockwaves through the corporate offices. He wanted final cut privilege, he wanted first dollar gross, and he demanded that all ownership rights to the film revert entirely back to him after 25 years. This contract was the real-life crossroads deal that broke the minds of the Hollywood elite. One anonymous executive actually ran to the trade publications to complain that Coogler's terms could signify the absolute end of the studio system as we know it. The hypocrisy was so loud it was deafening. White directors like Quentin Tarantino have been securing these types of ownership deals for decades without anyone writing long analytical think pieces about existential threats to cinema. The moment a black director demanded the exact same right to own his labor, the industry labeled it a dangerous crisis. Coogler literally wrote a movie about preventing cultural theft, and then forced the biggest studio in town to sign a contract that guaranteed his own creative survival. While the corporate offices were having a collective panic attack over the money, an even darker situation was developing on the actual physical set of the movie. Playing twin brothers Smoke and Stack turned out to be a psychological mountain that almost completely broke Michael B. Jordan. This wasn't a situation where he just put on a different shirt and smiled for a different camera angle. The production required him to shoot every single shared scene multiple times, performing 4 or 5 intense takes as one brother, completely resetting his posture, tone, and mental state, and then doing it all over again as the other. The digital compositing team then stitched these 2 separate raw performances together to make them look like 2 completely distinct human beings sharing the same physical space. The sheer exhaustion of switching back and forth between 2 highly volatile, traumatized characters took a massive toll on Jordan's mental health. Insiders from the crew have leaked reports stating that the actor started losing his grip on where one brother ended and the other began. He was spending 14 hours a day trapped inside the mindset of characters involved with Al Capone, stolen money, and literal blood-sucking entities. You cannot just turn that kind of darkness off when the director yells cut at the end of the night. The pressure to deliver a historic performance for his longtime friend was immense, and Jordan reportedly pushed himself past the point of human endurance. He became distant, highly irritable, and completely consumed by the roles. This intense psychological deterioration is exactly what caught the attention of the Harvey family. As everyone knows, the internet spent months dragging Lori Harvey after her high-profile split from Jordan, claiming she was simply too superficial or not ready to commit to a domestic lifestyle with America's favorite leading man. But the minute Jordan hit that Oscar stage and the media started painting him as a flawless, tragic hero, the Harvey camp decided they had tolerated enough of the public narrative. Marjorie Harvey, the undisputed matriarch of the family, allegedly began dropping massive hints to close associates that the public image Jordan presents on late-night television is nothing more than a beautifully manufactured mask. According to these leaked whispers from the inner circle, Lori didn't just walk away from a relationship because she got bored. She allegedly fled a situation that was becoming increasingly volatile due to the intense creative method acting Jordan was putting himself through. The Harvey camp has let it slip that the gentleman persona completely disappears when Jordan is deep inside a project, replaced by a brooding, unapproachable intensity that makes a normal relationship virtually impossible. They are implying that the Academy didn't just reward a great actor, they rewarded a man who willingly let a very real, volatile darkness consume his personal life just to secure a trophy. This brings us directly to the night of March 15, 2026, when the entire industry gathered to witness the climax of this entire psychological drama. The atmosphere inside the Dolby Theater was thick with tension because everyone in that room knew the stakes. Sinners had already broken every historical metric by pulling in a staggering 16 Academy Award nominations, the most in the history of the entire institution. The movie had grossed over $370 million worldwide, proving that audiences were hungry for something raw. When the category for Best Actor was called, the entire room held its collective breath, knowing that history was about to be made regardless of who won. When Michael B. Jordan's name was read out loud, the emotional dam completely broke. He didn't just stand up and walk to the stage like a standard winner. He stood up, grabbed his mother's hand with a desperate grip, and kissed her cheek as if he was waking up from a long, exhausting nightmare. By the time his feet hit the steps of the stage, the tears were already streaming down his face. He reached the microphone, looked out at the very establishment that had tried to gatekeep his community for a century, and bellowed the words "God is good" twice into the microphone. It wasn't a standard acceptance speech. It felt like an exorcism of all the pressure he had been carrying for the last 2 years. He then proceeded to read off the names of the few black men and women who had won before him, acknowledging a lineage of survival in an industry designed to exploit them. He named Sidney Poitier, Denzel Washington, Halle Berry, Jamie Foxx, Forrest Whitaker, and Will Smith. He was drawing a literal line in the sand, forcing the predominantly white audience to look at how small that list actually is compared to a century of cinema history. His father had flown all the way from Ghana just to be in that room, witnessing his son become only the sixth black man in history to take home that specific prize. The entire theater stood on their feet, clapping wildly, completely unaware of the irony. They were standing and cheering for a man who had just used their own platform to tell them that their entire system was built on theft. They were celebrating a performance that was achieved through immense personal and psychological suffering. The media immediately began spinning this as the ultimate feel-good story of the year, focusing entirely on the tears and the family dynamic. But the industry insiders knew better. They knew that the real story wasn't the trophy itself, but the massive financial and systemic precedent that had just been set by the film's success. The celebration was just a distraction from the cold, hard reality that the power dynamics in Hollywood had permanently shifted, and the elite were absolutely furious about it. The anger wasn't just confined to the studio offices. It began spilling out into public view through carefully coordinated media leaks. Within 24 hours of the broadcast, several anonymous producers began questioning the validity of the voting process itself, suggesting that the Academy had merely caved to social pressure rather than rewarding artistic merit. They started launching quiet campaigns to diminish the film's achievements, trying to rebrand it as a fluke rather than a masterpiece. This coordinated backlash is the exact proof that the movie hit its target perfectly. The establishment couldn't stop the film from making money, they couldn't stop it from winning awards, so their only remaining option was to try and destroy the reputation of the men who made it. This brings us to the bizarre, unfolding reality of the post-Oscar landscape, where the public triumph is rapidly collapsing into a chaotic web of legal threats, corporate sabotage, and personal betrayals. The victory lap didn't even last a single week before the first major legal salvo was fired behind the scenes. Warner Brothers executives, still smarting from the brutal terms of the contract they had been forced to sign, allegedly began looking for any loophole possible to invalidate the ownership reversion clause. They realized that allowing a creator to regain total control of an asset that generates hundreds of millions of dollars would create a devastating precedent for future talent negotiations. The studio's legal team has reportedly initiated a quiet, internal audit of the entire production budget, searching for any evidence of financial mismanagement or contract breaches that could be used to tie Coogler up in litigation for the next 2 decades. They are attempting to launch a war of attrition, hoping to burn through the director's resources before the year 2050 ever arrives. But Coogler isn't a political novice who can be easily intimidated by corporate lawyers. He has already assembled his own high-powered legal team to counter every single move the studio makes, turning the aftermath of a historic Oscar win into a brutal, high-stakes chess match that could permanently alter how intellectual property is managed in the entertainment world. The high-stakes chess match between Ryan Coogler and the Warner Brothers legal department is only the tip of a massive, frozen iceberg that is currently tearing through the underbelly of Hollywood. While the public is still busy watching clips of Michael B. Jordan crying on stage, a completely separate, terrifying paper trail has begun leaking from the accounting offices of the major studios. Several anonymous whistleblowers have recently uploaded heavily redacted documents to encrypted forums, detailing what can only be described as a systematic effort to financially suppress the profits of sinners. These leaked financial statements indicate that the studio artificially inflated the marketing and distribution costs of the film in overseas markets. The goal was to make the movie look less profitable on paper than it actually was in reality. Why would a studio want to make their own historic, record-breaking movie look like a financial disappointment? The answer traces directly back to that revolutionary contract Coogler forced them to sign. Because Coogler secured a first-dollar gross clause, every single cent the movie brings in results in an immediate payout to his production company. By hiding the true global box office numbers under a mountain of fake promotional expenses, the corporate executives were allegedly trying to shortchange the director out of tens of millions of dollars in immediate revenue. It is the exact real-world manifestation of the vampire metaphor used in the film. The studio was actively trying to drain the financial life force out of a project created by black talent, proving that the predatory nature of the entertainment industry hasn't changed a bit since the days of Robert Johnson. But the financial sabotage did not stop at the accounting desk. The investigative findings getting passed around Hollywood group chats reveal an even more sinister corporate operation. Sources claim that weeks before the Oscar voting concluded, a prominent public relations firm was hired by an unnamed rival studio executive to execute a digital smear campaign against Michael B. Jordan. The operation was designed to leak highly exaggerated, fabricated reports regarding Jordan's behavior on the set of Sinners to mainstream tabloid outlets. The planned narrative was to paint Jordan as an unstable, abusive method actor who had completely lost his mind while playing the twin brothers Smoke and Stack. The conspirators hoped that if they could make Jordan look like a public liability, the conservative bloc of the Academy voters would panic and dump their votes into a safer, more traditional candidate. The only reason this smear campaign failed to launch in time is because the movie's global box office momentum was too massive for any manufactured tabloid drama to slow down. However, just because the corporate smear campaign failed before the Oscars doesn't mean the drama disappeared. In fact, the moment the golden statue was placed in Jordan's hands, the floodgates of personal controversy swung wide open, and this time the threat came from inside the house. The Harvey family inner circle has reportedly been operating like a shadow public relations firm, carefully feeding specific, damaging details about Jordan's private life to high-profile internet commentators. Marjorie Harvey has allegedly been leading the charge, using her extensive social connections to ensure that Hollywood society knows exactly why her daughter Lori walked away from the relationship. The latest leaked text messages, allegedly from a group chat involving close associates of the Harvey family, suggest that Jordan's psychological immersion into the characters of Smoke and Stack created a living nightmare for anyone residing in his immediate orbit. The texts claim that Jordan began bringing the cold, calculating survival instincts of a 1930s Al Capone gangster into his modern, everyday life. He reportedly became obsessed with surveillance, demanding to know who his partner was speaking to at all times, and isolating himself in dark rooms for days on end to stay in character. The Harvey camp is framing Lori's departure not as a casual breakup, but as a necessary escape from a man who was willingly letting his psyche be eaten alive. This domestic fallout has triggered an absolute frenzy across social media platforms, with millions of fans taking sides in a war of narratives. On one side, Jordan's defenders are claiming that the Harvey family is simply bitter because their former golden goose has achieved ultimate, historical validation without them. They argue that the family is attempting to leech off Jordan's historic Oscar moment by manufacturing controversy out of standard, high-level creative dedication. While the internet bickers over the relationship drama, the actual political consequences inside the industry are turning incredibly hostile. A group of traditionalist Hollywood producers has reportedly formed a quiet, defensive coalition to ensure that a contract like Coogler's never gets signed again. This coalition is currently lobbying the major talent agencies, threatening to blackball future projects if agents continue to demand ownership reversion rights or first-dollar gross percentages for their clients. The traditional elites are terrified that if other elite directors follow Coogler's blueprint, the studios will be reduced to mere distribution platforms, losing their absolute, permanent control over intellectual property. They are viewing Coogler's historic deal not as a fair victory for a creator, but as a dangerous infection that must be contained before it spreads to the rest of the industry. The contract has become a literal ideological battleground for the future of entertainment ownership. To add fuel to this raging fire, an independent financial regulatory body has reportedly opened a preliminary probe into the production financing of Sinners. The investigation is focused on how the initial $90 to $100 million budget was moved through various offshore shell companies during the international shooting schedule. While this is a common practice for major blockbuster films to maximize tax incentives, the timing of the probe is incredibly suspicious. Industry insiders are whispering that the studio executives themselves initiated the regulatory tip-off, hoping that a government audit will uncover some minor compliance error that can be used to freeze Coogler's back-end profits. They are willing to invite federal scrutiny onto their own financial practices just to get a chance at breaking the director's ironclad contract. It is a scorched earth strategy born out of pure corporate desperation. Amidst all this chaos, the creative community has started pushing back with immense force. High-profile actors and directors are publicly rallying behind Coogler and Jordan, recognizing that this fight is about much more than just one film. Figures like Jamie Foxx and Will Smith have continued to use their massive platforms to defend the integrity of the project, framing the ongoing corporate backlash as a direct, modern-day continuation of the historic exploitation the movie itself critiques. The public discourse around Sinners has officially transcended the boundaries of a standard film review. It has become a loud, chaotic, and deeply uncomfortable mirror held up to the face of American capitalism and cultural consumption. The movie revealed the devilish darkness lurking within the industry's history, and the industry's frantic, toxic reaction to its success is proving that the devil is still very much alive, well, and working under a corporate title. Every single interview Jordan has given since his historic win has been picked apart by body language experts and internet detectives looking for signs of cracking. In a recent late-night television appearance, viewers noticed that Jordan appeared noticeably exhausted, frequently staring into space and avoiding direct questions about his future projects with Coogler. The internet immediately seized on this, claiming it as definitive proof that the mental toll of the dual roles has left permanent psychological scars. The narrative being spun by the conspiracy channels is that Jordan made a literal modern-day crossroads bargain of his own. They are claiming that he knew the psychological cost of playing smoke and stack would ruin his personal life and alienate his peers, but he chose to make the sacrifice anyway because the promise of entering the historical elite of the Best Actor category was too powerful to resist. Whether you believe the internet theories or the corporate leaks, one thing is completely undeniable. The absolute chaos surrounding Sinners has ensured that the film will never be forgotten. It has broken the neat, clean illusion of Hollywood's award season and exposed the brutal, ongoing war for creative freedom and financial independence. And as the corporate entities prepare their next wave of legal attacks, the story is about to take an even more public, volatile turn. The public fallout from this high-stakes corporate warfare is now threatening to spill over into a highly publicized congressional hearing regarding predatory intellectual property practices in the entertainment sector. Independent legal analysts are predicting that if the internal studio audits leak into federal hands, multiple top-tier executives could be forced to resign under the weight of financial corruption charges. The situation has transformed from a bitter Hollywood dispute into a full-scale institutional crisis that could shatter the reputation of major distribution companies. Several civil rights organizations have already begun drafting formal petitions demanding a transparent federal investigation into how major studios calculate international box office payouts for minority creators. The momentum behind this movement is growing at an exponential rate, fueled entirely by the internet's refusal to let the Sinners controversy fade into obscurity. The corporate elites who originally thought they could quietly suppress Ryan Coogler's profits are now facing a public relations nightmare that money simply cannot fix. While the legal storm gathers strength over Washington, the personal warfare between Michael B. Jordan and the Harvey faction is reaching a volatile crescendo. Leaked reports from elite Hollywood circles suggest that a major television network is quietly developing an explosive, tell-all interview special featuring prominent members of the Harvey family. This hypothetical broadcast is being designed to systematically deconstruct Jordan's public image, utilizing unreleased text messages, emails, and witness testimonies from the set of the film. The anticipation surrounding this potential media leak has paralyzed Jordan's public relations team, who are reportedly working around the clock to secure a non-disclosure agreement or a legal injunction to block the broadcast. The internet is already anticipating the fallout, with digital commentators predicting that the scandal will force Jordan into a temporary professional hiatus. The golden boy who stood proudly on the Oscar stage just weeks ago is now facing the very real prospect of a forced social media exile. To add to the absolute chaos, the financial stability of the studio itself is beginning to fracture under the weight of the ongoing backlash. Major institutional investors, terrified by the prospect of prolonged federal litigation and public boycotts, have begun quietly pulling their capital out of the studio's upcoming film slate. Financial market reports indicate that the company's stock has suffered a significant dip since the secret corporate audits were brought to light by digital whistleblowers. This sudden financial instability has triggered widespread panic throughout the studio system, with rumors circulating that a massive corporate restructuring is imminent. Several high-level production heads are reportedly packing up their offices, anticipating that they will be used as scapegoats by the board of directors to appease furious shareholders. The system tried to drain the life force out of a historic cinematic project, but the resulting counterattack is instead draining the financial life out of the system itself. Meanwhile, the cultural impact of the film continues to mutate into something far larger than cinema. Across the globe, underground musical collectives and independent digital creators are using the Sinner's blueprint to launch their own decentralized distribution platforms. They are bypassing the traditional gatekeepers entirely, utilizing blockchain technology and direct-to-consumer models to ensure that they maintain absolute, permanent ownership of their creative property from day one. Ryan Coogler's defiant contract has become the literal manifesto for a global creative revolution. Young artists are no longer looking at an Oscar trophy as the ultimate symbol of success. They are looking at the ownership reversion clause as the true gold. As the corporate empire panics, Michael B. Jordan remains a deeply reclusive figure, rarely leaving his private estate except for mandatory promotional obligations. Close friends of the actor have expressed deep concern over his continued isolation, whispering to media outlets that the psychological boundaries between his real identity and the twin characters of Smoke and Stack have not fully healed. He has reportedly refused multiple lucrative offers for major blockbuster franchises, choosing instead to remain in complete creative silence. This prolonged silence has only amplified the public's obsession with his mental well-being, with internet forums filled to the brim with bizarre theories regarding his condition. Some fans believe he is intentionally staying quiet to let the Harvey family drama burn itself out, while others suspect he is preparing a massive counter-offensive that will permanently expose his detractors. The tension is thick enough to cut with a knife, and the entire digital landscape is waiting for the next shoe to drop. The final, definitive blow to the traditional studio system may come from Ryan Coogler himself, who is reportedly in secret talks with independent billionaire tech investors to launch a fully sovereign, creator-owned film studio. This proposed entity would completely eliminate the need for corporate financing, offering top-tier talent the exact same historic ownership terms that Coogler secured for Sinners. If this venture succeeds, it will effectively render the old Hollywood studio system completely obsolete. The executive elites are fully aware of this existential threat, which explains why their legal attacks have become so erratic, desperate, and vicious. They are fighting for their very survival against a cultural wave that has completely outgrown their ability to control it. The Crossroads deal wrote the future of the entertainment industry in blood, and no amount of corporate litigation can erase the mark that has been left on the cultural landscape. The legacy of March 15, 2026, will not be remembered for the glamorous outfits or the emotional speeches, but as the exact day the illusion of Hollywood permanent ownership died. The system rewarded a masterpiece because its sheer power left them with absolutely no other choice, but the price of that reward has turned out to be an all-consuming fire. The fire is currently burning through the boardrooms, the legal departments, and the personal lives of everyone who dared to step near the crossroads. As the dust begins to settle on this historic confrontation, the true meaning of the film's title has become chillingly clear to the public. The real sinners were never the fictional monsters on the silver screen, nor were they the artists who tapped into the dark depths of human emotion to create timeless art. The true sinners are the ones who sat in the shadows of the industry for a century, consuming human souls for profit, completely unaware that the harvest was finally coming to an end. The final chapters of this massive investigative saga are still being written in real time across the internet, with new leaks appearing every single hour. The corporate gatekeepers are losing their grip on the narrative, and the truth is rushing out to fill the void. Hollywood wanted a simple horror movie to entertain the masses, but they accidentally invoked a reckoning that will reshape American culture for generations to come. The corporate elite thought they could buy Michael B. Jordan's silence with a golden statue, but they accidentally exposed the entire system. They wanted a flashy vampire horror movie, but they walked away with an institutional reckoning that is tearing Hollywood apart at the seams. The industry is currently collapsing under the weight of its own greed, and the truth cannot be hidden anymore. The boardroom leaks, the Harvey family psychological warfare, and Ryan Coogler's revolutionary contract have permanently shifted the balance of power. But now the real question belongs to you. Do you think Michael B. Jordan went too far into the darkness to secure his historical legacy, or was this sacrifice entirely necessary to break the chains of corporate ownership? Is the Harvey family speaking the absolute truth, or are they just trying to sabotage a historic black victory? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below because the internet is actively decoding this situation in real time. Do not let the mainstream media dictate the narrative for you. If you want to stay ahead of the massive entertainment cover-ups and get the raw truth before it gets scrubbed from the internet, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel right now, turn on your notifications, and share this video with everyone you know. The truth is officially out of the bag, and you do not want to miss what happens next. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the very next breakdown.